Welcome everyone to Ladder Daily Digest. We honor creators, and today we have with us Marti of Where Will You Go? Now, is Marti what you normally go by?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought we would talk a little bit about you first, like where did you grow up and any foundational events occur like before going to college or anything like that.
Yeah, I don't know that it's a pretty normal story, I guess. I don't know. I grew up in northern Utah, and my parents have a dairy farm. And so I grew up doing chores, milking cows, doing all that fun stuff, and going to church every week. Church was a big part of our life too.
Now, do you miss the fresh milk, or
It's
did
funny.
you?
I could still go get milk if I wanted to, and it's just more convenient to go to the store. So
Oh, you still could go to the farm?
I sure could.
Wow, that's
But
exciting. So is it near Logan?
yeah, yep, northern Utah.
Somebody said that they were in Logan for when the Olympic flame went through
Uh-huh.
or the Olympics, and they said it was the coldest they've ever been in their life. So it was
It
like
can.
February.
Yeah, it can get pretty cold up here. The worst is when you be doing chores and your hands are wet and you touch a bar and your hands would stick to the bar. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a
I've
thing.
seen jokes about people sticking their tongue out on
Right.
at frozen bars and stuff like
Right.
that.
The Christmas
Not a good
story, right?
idea.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. We just
So you're a typical Mormon girl.
yeah,
Did
went
you
to
have callings
activities.
as a youth?
Yeah, a few. I feel like I didn't have as many as other kids, but yeah, I did have a few.
You weren't as much of a Molly Mormon as some of your cohorts.
I probably wasn't as outgoing as other girls is probably what it was.
And were there
But
like dozens of young women?
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And yeah, girls camp was fun. Did trek. Yeah, I did. I think one of my favorite things about young women was doing church volleyball and church basketball. They don't really do that anymore, I've noticed, but it was fun.
Yeah. And then,
And yeah, I graduated. I went to Snow College, which is in central Utah. That's where I met my husband. And
so you
we went to
decided to
Utah.
leave home, go to Snow.
Yeah, really far away, like
Was that
3
was that
hours.
a was that a difficult decision, or was it
It
easy?
was it was like it was like sixes to go to Utah State or go to Snow College financially. And so I made the decision to get yeah, so I made the decision to go to Snow College and then ended up being really cool. It was a good school. Their their first two, so it's a junior college. So it's only 2 years, but they had really good physics department and math department. So I would say it well prepared me for Utah State when I finished my engineering degree. So
Now, is it a smaller school? How many students?
yeah, it is smaller. Like I want to say like your big classes are oh shoot, I'm trying to
Like
think.
the lectures?
Yeah, like even your big ones, they weren't going to be more than like maybe 40 kids. That
Oh
might be a
yeah, I
lot.
was going to say
But then
60 would be a little bit for where I went. You know, like
yeah.
120 seats at Cal State Hayward.
Yeah, like, I just remember going to Utah State and your generals, like your chemistry and stuff like that. It was just a ton of kids. And at Utah State, it would have been like a big high school class worth, like it wasn't crazy big. And then my engineering classes, some of them only had like 6 or 7 students in there. So you had the professors available to you whenever you needed them to like get help on problems and stuff like that. So
So did you score high on math and science and things, and why did you go to those subject matters?
yeah, I liked math. I don't know. I don't know that I really knew what engineering was until I actually started taking the classes. I just knew that I excelled in those ones, so I was like, "Yeah, let's try it." So,
I know all that. I thought an engineer was somebody that worked on a train.
yeah, yeah. I'm figuring it out now what engineers actually do, because even in school is way different than like when you're actually in the field, like when you're working.
Right. And
Yeah,
so you went 2 years to Snow.
yeah. I remember I took institute classes every day. So I was taking
Wow.
twice as many as it takes to like graduate in 4 years from institute. So I graduated institute after 2 years.
Huh.
There was someone gave me the idea. They're like, "Oh, I want to have institute every day," and I'm like, "Oh, that's a good idea." So that's
Just
what
to
I
be
did.
more Mormon, to be closer to the spirit.
Yeah, just to have a daily dose of church.
Yeah.
I would
And so
say
then,
I that was like my first year of college is probably the best I ever did with like my scripture study and stuff. Like I was able to develop habits that I never was able to develop while I was in high school. So, and that
so
was anyway,
did you consider a mission?
I did. But I got married first
Okay. You got your
because
MRS degree,
what's that?
Mrs. So and so.
Oh, right. Yes. Yeah, um I totally would have. In fact, my husband when we were dating, he wasn't sure I was serious because I was talking about a mission and I was just trying to not be too eager because he was mentioning how his cousin had gotten married way too fast. And so I was like, oh, I don't want to
Mm,
act like I want to get married or anything. But there
right.
was
So
some,
how long did you date then?
well, we met at the beginning of the school year and got married the next June.
Okay, that's pretty good.
Yeah. It's like what, August to June? Not even a year. Yep.
Yeah. And so then you transferred.
Yep. Then we
Or-
transferred. So we got married the summer in between those second and third year of college, and then we
And where'd you
finished
get
up at
married?
Utah in Logan Temple. Yep.
Logan. So it was a home field advantage.
Yes, for sure. Manti would have been pretty cool too. I like the both Manti and Logan temples are about they look very similar. I
Mm.
like those old pioneer temples.
And then you just finished your degree.
Yeah, so I we kind of planned it out so that I could graduate before we started having kids. And
Hmm.
so I graduated and then a couple months later had our first. And then like a year after that my husband graduated and then we moved out to Colorado and had some automatic family out there because, we're Latter-day Saints. And so go to church and we have, boom, have friends. So that's kind
That's
of
right.
nice. And
And,
lived out
and
there
so
for a
is he an
while.
engineer as well?
Yeah, we met in our engineering classes.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So, yeah, we lived out there for like 7 years. And then we moved back to Utah. Um, nothing too, I don't nothing too out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
Um,
And so how long ago did you think you might even start a podcast?
Um, I think I was listening to a lot of stuff when I was like right after we left, and I felt like there was like a hole because it seemed like a lot of times when people left the church, they always lean left politically, and there wasn't really people seeming that were leaning right, and that's where I am. So, and I would say like the different things matter to you. I don't know how to explain it. The things I was interested in weren't being covered. Like I was interested in meaning and how to like what's the for example, a lot of times when you leave the church, you're like, okay, let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater. And I know that there's a lot of people that say, well, there is no baby in the bathwater with religion, and they're just pretty sure that religion is just a story, a made up story, and there's no benefit there. And that's fine. I just don't agree. So I I look at religion as something that is good, I guess, for humanity, but I don't know how to fit it in because I also don't like literally believe it. So I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah, it's a conundrum. And then also the other thing is as you leave, there's like what is your authentic self? Who
Yeah.
is that person? I have no idea, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
So
So,
what choices would you have done differently, right, if you hadn't done all that institute?
mhm, sure. Yep. All of those things. So anyway, and I also, one of the things I feel pretty strongly about is, um, especially with like the politics going on in the background, it seems like people are really tribal, and in a similar way to like Mormons and ex-Mormons can be tribal. And I'm like, I don't know. I like the idea of people trying to see what they have in common instead of seeing what they have not in common. It's really easy to like criticize and see the negative of any group of people if that's what you're going to spend time on. And I guess I just
Right.
like to encourage people to develop relationships, especially across difference divides, so that you can kind of see the humanity of someone you disagree with. And you may not like agree with them in the end, but I feel strongly that like our society would be better if you have people around you that can see your blind spots, but that you still respect, that
Right.
you
Like
don't.
on one hand, we know that tribalism was genetically positive, right?
Yeah, right.
We are programmed to want to be with a group.
Yeah,
Being with a group is way better than being by yourself for survival out in the wild.
yeah,
And so, but at the same time, once society is formed, right, then you have larger groups. And so it's less tribal, but then we have little tribal groups within our society, right?
mm,
Different churches people belong to, different politics, different, interests, you
mhm.
know, and so you got this you still have the tribal things going on within the larger society. And in a way, you're trying to think about even larger, like the family of mankind, right?
Yeah, and um, yeah, and the reason for that is because I think that if you're only associating with people that agree with you, you're going to miss something, and then you're not gonna have as clear of a picture of what's going on. And, like, I think that's true with Latter-day Saints when they're all around each other and they're not aware of criticisms of the church, and I also think it's true for ex-Mormons when they're not, like, aware of, like, the benefits that, religion can have in a society or something, I don't know. I feel like it happens everywhere. Same thing with politics. It's interesting, like, with politics, for example, if you're watching a certain news station, you might not even be aware of what's playing on the other news station. Um, there's just a lot of blind spots that people have that
Yeah.
might change their mind if they knew the full story, or at least it would make them a little less certain of what they believe.
So you're thinking something's missing from the podcast land in the ex-Mormon space. And then what happens? What do you do from there?
Yeah. Well, so I had been feeling that way for a while, and then Bill of Real had sent out like a
Like a request for
yeah,
podcasters?
yeah, female voices specifically,
Oh,
and I
yeah.
was like, "Hey, I'm a female." So
Did you
I
like tape a few
yeah.
shows
So
and
I
then send one
taped
in?
yep, I taped my first one. I just basically I think my first episode is the only one where I'm not with somebody else. It's just me. And I just went over a few ideas about how you can belong nowhere and anywhere. So just and I had read a bunch of books that kind of went with that theme, and I anyway published it. And then my second one was another podcaster, and we were just talking about how you can still be friends with your Mormon friends even after you leave, and just how to give people the benefit of the doubt, and they might mess up and say something offensive, but you might too. So you just
Right.
try to
Yeah, my mother-in-law is a faithful attendee. I actually attended church yesterday
oh wow.
because we got an email from the stake president a few days ago saying that there was gonna be a change in the bishopric. And it's like, I never heard of that before. Like you could get a calling as the chalkboard eraser, and they would say, "Don't tell anybody until we announce it on
Oh
Sunday."
yeah,
Right?
secret, big
Everything's all
secret.
secret and,
Yeah,
and confidential and stuff. because the Lord works in mysterious ways and nobody's supposed to know. And everybody's supposed to say, aha, he's a perfect chalkboard eraser person for that job. The Lord is with the bishop
Yep.
for this calling. And
Yeah.
so I wanted to see what would happen. So I actually mentioned it to somebody, like, do you think they're doing it like to just get a few people extra to come to church and maybe, that they keep on coming?
Uh-huh.
And they said, well, it worked for you. So that was interesting. So you send some, did you like start your own channel then first, and then Bill sort of brought you in?
No, I just sent him some recording examples, and it was supposed to be like a tryout, and then it ended up being that the amount of people that sent recordings was enough that he could do all of them. And
Oh, okay.
so he just let everybody publish, and he just kind of helped us out with the bumpers and explained what his expectation was for the quality of it and helped us figure out how to upload, and then we went from there. And I just and I it's like my podcast is mine. Like Bill doesn't really have time to like listen to all of them, and just like every once in a while he'll give some feedback, but it's
But otherwise,
mostly
you're on your own.
yep. And
And do you
so
get any remuneration at all?
um I don't take any. I think I could have taken a little bit, not much. Yeah, we have like an agreement where I get a portion of the like donations, but I don't ever ask for donations, so I don't get very many. And
All
I
right.
told him pretty early on that I didn't want any money because I felt like that felt weird. So
Hmm.
my time is my donation to Mormon discussions, I guess.
That's right. It's part of your Mormon brain. You're
That's
supposed to volunteer for a good cause,
that's right.
right? And so, what date was your first podcast about? Like,
I want to
you
say it
remember
was like early 22 or maybe end of 21.
the? Okay,
Maybe.
so almost like a Christmas present for you to be
It
a
was.
podcaster.
It was. There was a lot going on at that time because I started working at that time too. And then I also was participating with this group called Three Practices.
Oh, right.
And um, I haven't done much with them for a little over a year now. We had some health stuff go on in our family, and I had to drop some stuff. And so that's what got dropped. But
I think that's what was my first introduction to you, because I was learning about three practices, and then I saw you on a show with it, or I can't remember
okay.
who else was there.
Yeah. Those were really cool. So they're not public, they're not published, but they're basically just group discussions using Zoom. And there's a
Right, you might
form.
have been talking about the three practices with somebody,
Okay.
explaining
Oh,
what they were.
yeah. So a three practice, I think they call them circles. And so you would sign up for a topic, and then there's a format in how you talk. And the format is been designed to help people learn how to listen. And so different people have turns speaking, but you can't like speak directly with each other. You have to use the format, and it goes something like, someone talks for 2 minutes, and then anybody in the group can ask a clarifying question, and the question has to begin with, "I'd be curious to know."
I'd be curious to know, right?
Yep.
I
And
was I was thinking it was help me understand, but that's something else.
yeah. And so and then the person responds. And then you don't get to respond back. You can do a follow-up, "I'd be curious to know," and then the next person gets a turn to ask more clarifying questions.
Does it like do round robin, or just people self-select the
So
next?
each circle was usually about an hour long, and you usually had time for about 3 volunteers to
Hmm.
say like their 2-minute spiel. And then the rest of the time was clarifying questions and then answering the clarifying questions. So, and
Now,
there, I
what
mean,
do you,
that organization still has free circles that you can go sign up and participate in them. It's just like number 3 practices. I think it's .org.
has
I don't know
anybody
for
like
sure.
compared and contrasted with street epistemology?
It's different because street epistemology is like one-on-one, right? And you are
Hmm.
trying to just help them try to think about something, whereas I feel like the other one is more it's
Informative.
similar. It's similar. It's similar
Hmm.
because I think if you're doing both of them, like in a good spirit, you're going to do the same thing, which is you're going to understand the other person better. Sometimes I feel like street epistemology, you are trying to get that person closer to your view, which is not necessarily bad, but
Yeah, because I think street epistemology, somebody that you make a claim, and
right,
then the street epistemology person tries to ask,
why
how
they
did
think
you,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
how did you come to believe that?
Yeah.
Like,
And so
if you
the
think the moon was made out of cheese, how did you come to that knowledge?
yeah.
And as they explore that, well, I read a book. Oh, was the book written by, a professor of
Mhm.
cheeseology or something like that? And then if it's just like, well, no, it was my Uncle Joe who they called
Yeah.
Crazy Joe said it, and I
Yeah.
just believed it ever since because it felt right.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'd say the biggest difference. So street epistemology, you have the person that's asking the questions that's had a lot of practice in what kind of questions to ask, where the three practice circles, really just anybody can ask a question. It's anything that pops in your head. So and sometimes they'll do like controversial topics. Someone might say, I think that Trump should be in jail or something like that. And then someone could ask, oh, what? And then so they'll say something about why they think that. And so someone could ask them, like, where did you learn this? I'd be curious to know where you learned XYZ. Or so it's just a way to, anybody could ask any question. So I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, and so, but it's instead of like being a one-on-one discussion, it's more like a group practice, right?
Mhm.
It's like so as part of it, like as a group member, you learn from other people's questions and answers, as well as try to learn how to give good questions and good answers.
Yeah, it's definitely that. And there's been some really cool circles I've been in. I would almost describe it like there's some of them that have been almost like a really good church lesson. I don't know if people can relate to that. Maybe people hated church, but
Yeah,
it
because
did.
a good lesson isn't the teacher just saying stuff. That it's a good question that there's a lot of group
Yeah,
discussion where people get enlightened by the whole group
yeah.
in a way.
And yep. And so there's some I've been in some circles where I think one of the most interesting things about those circles is you're in a room with complete strangers for the most part, unless you came with somebody that you knew. But generally, I've been in circles with complete strangers, and the things that you're willing to tell complete strangers is fascinating to me. Like
Hmm.
what people are willing to say, what they're willing to answer and
So they could be more
divulge.
open
It seems like it, yeah. It's
because
very
they're not
interesting.
inhibited by social constructs or norms or
Or something, I don't know.
something.
Um,
It's almost
I
like anonymity.
Yeah, a little bit.
Hmm.
So that's been interesting. But anyway, yeah, I really enjoyed participating in that. And like one of the things that I'd love to do with my podcast is to publish a circle where the participants know that it's going to be published and try to share one of those circles publicly just so that they can see what it is. I think that's one of the things that made it the hardest to get people to come is that they didn't know what it was and they didn't want to sign up. But I feel like if people knew what it was, they might be able to use
So
it
you're
as a
thinking about
tool.
the logistics, like would you have three cameras?
No, I wouldn't do it
Hmm.
like that. I'd still do a Zoom meeting. I just would record
Oh, a
it.
Zoom meeting, right?
Yeah. And I would just record it so that I could publish it. And maybe I could get a few recognizable people to participate so that
Yeah.
people would be interested in watching it. But
What is there a podcast that you've done that you're really proud of?
so I did this for a book club. Um, I did one called Relationships Across Difference Divides, and it was like a slideshow presentation. And then I talked through the slides. And um, that one I spent a lot of time on. I feel like it has good information for people who want to have good, like if their goal is to have a good relationship with somebody and they're struggling, um, it's like a way to have good relationships with focusing on yourself because you can't control the other person. So, anyways, just tips to help you have good relationships if you so wish to have them. And then the other one that I think the one that I'm most starstruck about was I interviewed John Vervaeke, and he is a professor, I think, at like in Canada, like Toronto, somewhere. I don't even know where, but he's like a secular guy, but he has developed ideas around developing meaning. Like he feels like there's a meaning crisis in our society, and he has like a course that kind of goes through what meaning is, how, like, I don't know how to describe it. But anyway, I had an interview with him and we talked about what it's like leaving the church. And I asked him questions about, you know, um, just how it's hard to trust things after you leave, after you've been burned so bad. It's hard to put your trust in anything really. And he just kind of talks about how you need trust and how to, be wise and try to develop wisdom so that you don't get burned again. And so
Right.
anyway,
I remember thinking as I was starting to get bored maybe with religion way before I thought that there might be something wrong with religion,
yeah.
right? Which is probably being bored with religion and Mormonism is kind of a normal thing because you get the same lessons every 4 years, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you're old, then you've had them all for 20 times or whatever.
Sure.
And so I remember thinking like the pattern of life, like it's to graduate from high school. And then you get married so that you can have kids that can graduate from high school. Mm-hmm. And then they get married so that they can have kids to graduate. Like that was like the apex thing, event, because not everybody goes to college, right? But everybody goes to high school and just about, complete somehow, even if they drop out the GED or something, So that's like the crowning achievement as a kid, right?
Yeah.
Once you go to college, you're an adult. It's like a kid's job is to graduate from high school. And then as an adult, your job is to have kids that can graduate from high school. And that was sort of like, it's turtles all the way down for me. So you're like the meaning of life. That was it.
High school.
Yeah, high school. And then going to McDonald's, maybe, right? You throw that in. It's the cherry on top.
Oh, that's funny.
Did your book club thing just get published by the book club?
Yeah. I published it as an episode as well.
And you published it as an episode. Okay. Do you remember what episode number or
I called it relationships across difference divides. It would have been like one of the first, probably 10 or something
near the
like
beginning?
that. Yeah. Yeah.
And
I
your
don't have
first
a lot of
episode?
episodes. There's only like 30 episodes, so there's not a lot to scroll through.
And your first episode was the one that you submitted as you, and so it was good enough and you published it, and that was number one.
That's an audio only episode.
Oh, okay.
So
right. And so 30 episodes over 2.5 years.
Not very many.
not really breaking a sweat.
No. But I'd like to think that, I don't know, I don't love, one of the things I feel better in my life is when I'm not consuming so much content. I feel like a lot of times my attention is driven not by me, but by, I don't know, something that's not productive. And then I don't
Like
feel very
watching the
good.
news all day long is not productive
Yeah,
either.
right. And so I'd like to think that I don't like to produce stuff that is going to grab your attention and steal it from something else that you're doing, but I'm hopeful that it's helpful to people. So I'm
like
okay with
a resource, but not a pastime.
Yeah. That's my that's what I'd like it to be. And there's certainly some are more clickbaity than others. I don't know.
You're like I started,
It's more like a library than like a watch every episode kind of a thing.
We'll say 10 months ago I started. I think I have 70 episodes, and I'm kind of getting burned out because it's just like a never-ending cycle of having like 20 people that I ask, hey, do you want to be on the show? And then 5 of them might say, what's it about? Right. And so I send them a sample. And then a week later, 2 of them say, okay, I'll be on.
Yeah.
And then I'll say, when might you be available? And they'll say, oh, probably in a month or 2.
Yeah.
So I got all these things staggered. And then, so 2 months later, I'm trying to think, who was that said they would come on now? Because I didn't write it down somewhere or something like that. And so
Yeah. No, that's
that's been
true.
a problem for me.
Coordination has been really hard, for sure. Because I have definitely a lot of guests that I wish I could have on, and just coordinating with them or them having the time doesn't happen. So I feel you.
And the other thing about my show is about the guest, right? And so it's very hard for me to string 3 sentences together where I remember what I was talking about at the end of the 3rd sentence. And so a lot of times, like if I'm partnering with either Maven or Summer Rain or somebody else, my job sometimes is just to comedic interlude every now and then, say something funny. And then sometimes my co-host will string together like a 5-sentence question where I'm just in awe. Like, how could you think of all those sentences and then come up with a question at the end, to set up the question, So I'm a good, like, gee, I thought of a question, and just ask a question. So I also talk over the guest too much. I got that as a criticism somewhere in one of the shows a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Stop interrupting your guest. Like, sorry.
Yeah, I get negative feedback as well.
Yeah,
Can't
so
keep
that's
everyone happy. My one episode, I wasn't looking at the camera, and that was bugging people because my camera is on my laptop and my screen is broken on my laptop, so I have to look at a different monitor. And so I try to set up my screen behind the laptop screen just so that I don't accidentally look away.
I think I saw one of the comments like that, and they said, well,
Yeah.
at least if she switched positions, then she'd be looking at the guest
No,
instead of.
it's because my computer camera is totally away from the screen. So I have to I have to basically cover the screen I'm looking at, and then that's kind of weird too because I'm not totally looking at you. I'm
Right.
looking at like the top of your head.
Yeah. So anyhow, thanks for coming on. I'll provide some links in our description to some of the episodes we talked about. Is there what's on the horizon? You have some things
Not
planned?
much. I think you might be catching one of the final like I could like, you answer the question, where do you see yourself in like 1 year? Where do I see my podcast in 1 year or 2 years? There's a really high chance that it's just not going anymore.
So
So
maybe I should just title this, Where Will You Go, Marty?
that's right. Where will you go? Are you
Where are you
are you
going after
even
all?
are you still even here?
That's right. Why are you still here, Gene? I could title something someday.
Yeah, there you go.
So anyway, everyone, if you liked this show, subscribe, check out Marty's show, and hope everybody can have a great rest of the summer. And we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.